First and Pod, thank you for being with us. Danny Parkins, Andrew Fillipponi. Subscribe, rate, give us a 5-star review. We appreciate you. Every team, every game, every week gets easier when there are just 6 games because it is super wild card weekend in the NFL. And I got to be honest, Pony, that's a name that's easy to mock, but this is a pretty super wild card weekend. This is a very, very good slate of wild card games overall.
It really is. There's one game that looks like it's lopsided, but that involves my team. And there's some things around that game right now that make it more interesting that we'll obviously touch on as we go throughout the podcast. But I'm a lover of this time of year, the playoffs. I think you know this about me. When I get spare time, I go to YouTube and I watch old NFL games. That's my that's my hobby. You know, I think my personal trainer is finding that out the hard way, that these are the types of things I do when I have free time. I don't stretch. I don't do push-ups. I don't do sit-ups. I don't work out.
But you work out enough to have a personal trainer, so sweet flex.
Well, I'm also a guy that 2 weeks ago bowled and was sore. So hence the need for a personal trainer.
Yeah. All right. I can relate to that.
I want to start with the questions here because it's about you, and that's the Lions and Rams.
Yes.
The Sunday night game, because you've been obsessed with this potential matchup for months. And now you're going to get it. And why we get it. I mean, NBC has this game in prime time as the Sunday night game. They clearly think it's, if not the best game, the most attractive and appealing game for broadcast networks is Packers Cowboys because of the brands there with those two teams. But I think after that, they thought that this game had the most compelling storylines and everything else to it. And you've been pounding the table for that for a long time, Danny, this matchup.
For a game with two teams who most likely cannot make or win the Super Bowl, this is as compelling of a playoff game as you can get for casual fan, for narrative, to get sucked in. Like, it will not be tough for when I'm watching this game Sunday night and Steph is on her phone scrolling Instagram or TikTok or whatever, me to give her the 30-second elevator pitch of Matt Stafford is the most accomplished quarterback in Lions history. The Lions haven't hosted a playoff game in 30 years. They traded him away. He won a Super Bowl. This is a beloved Lions team. Look how into it all of these fans are. And now he can come back and win the first playoff game in Detroit in generations, except for the other team. Like that is a very easy storyline to sell to people, to sell to the masses, the human interest piece of it, and pure fandom. Like, part of the reason that college sports are so popular is because when you watch them, the crowds are different. You can tell how much it matters to people. People love the cutaways and the crowd shots and the agony. This is going to be by far, I mean, if KC in the cold, and we'll get to that game and the elements and how it could affect it, there will be great crowd shots there. Obviously, McCarthy going up against his old team is compelling. But in terms of a home field advantage and a rockin' building in the NFL, I'm expecting Detroit to just be absolutely electric. And on top of it, man, people like points. Styles make fights. This is the highest total of the weekend. There should be a bunch of points scored. I think 51.5. I think this game's going over. So I just think it is going to be an entertaining shootout. And I think the fans are going to be hanging on the edge of their seats. And it's maximum pain if Detroit wins. And there's some sweet vindication for Stafford if he wins. So I just think it's compelling to the masses.
You're right about the fervor and the excitement that there is in Detroit right now, because one of my good friends and a guy that listens to this podcast a lot is a ticket broker. I call him Ticket Nick. Very creative, original nickname. And he's somebody that's all into the Super Bowl tickets now and everything that goes on with that. I mean, he lives a world where it's all about spreadsheets and numbers and those types of transactions and studying those markets like they're the stock market or Wall Street at all times. And this game's demand is blowing out of the water the other games. Like, I think I might have said on this podcast or maybe in passing in a text with you, Cowboys and Packers, it's not even close. Like, the get-in price for this game is close to $400. The get-in price for Jerry's World Sunday afternoon's less than $100. I mean, it's not even comparable. The closest thing
it's literally been 30 years, 94.
Well, and I was going to say the closest thing I can compare it to is the Pirates went 20 years without having a winning season, but that also coincided with them making the playoffs. They had a wild card game. So it was 20 years since the last time they were good. They host a playoff game. It's a one and done situation. It's, for my money, I've been to Stanley Cup final games and NFL playoff games. It was the best environment I've ever seen for a sporting event. I've been to Final Fours, you name it, every major sporting event there is. And you probably experienced some of this when you were in Kansas City with the Royals. Like, it was insane.
Yep.
How fans had been craving this for so long, and they finally got a chance to experience it. And that's the Lions. And it's an extra decade on top of what I experienced. And then you throw the Stafford component in. Do you think Stafford's a Hall of Fame quarterback? Do you think he's at least close at this point in his career?
Yes, absolutely.
I think so too. And the other aspect of this then is there's no precedent for this. Peyton Manning played the Colts in the playoffs when he was with Denver, but the game was in Denver. And he did go back there for a regular season game. We've had that. Brady went to Tampa Bay. Montana played the 49ers. Favre went into Green Bay. Those are all regular season games. No Hall of Fame quarterback has gone back to the city where he really had his Hall of Fame career with another team in the playoffs. It's never happened. So think about that, man. I mean,
yeah, and I mean, Stafford is obviously a cut below.
He's a bubble guy. I mean,
he's a cut below Brady, Favre. Like, even if he gets in, there's Hall of Fame.
I understand that, but even like Warren Moon and Fran Tarkenton and these guys that are Hall of Fame Dan Fouts only played for one team, but these guys that you would not say are
that you would put in Stafford's tier if he gets in.
Yeah, we don't have it with the pantheon of all-time greats, and then the tier below that where guys are still going to Canton. We don't have this, at least in the modern era. I mean, maybe like pre-Super Bowl, there's a Sonny Jurgensen or something like that I'm forgetting, but nobody no one who's alive can remember a situation that's analogous to what we're going to see Sunday night. And I think that, by the way, I think the Rams are going to break the Lions' hearts. I think their fans are going to go home. I don't think this is going to have a happy ending. I just keep thinking about the way the Rams played in Baltimore, and now looking back on that game that they lost in overtime, that moral victory is, for me, given how Miami played there and how Baltimore went to San Francisco and did a number on them, in addition to all of the 30-point plus games LA had in the last 6 weeks of the season. If I'm San Francisco and the Rams win this game, now San Francisco probably doesn't look at anybody and is intimidated, but I don't want to see the Rams again. I would not want to play them. I'd rather play Green Bay. I hope Green Bay beats Dallas. But I would not want the Rams and Sean McVay and Aaron Donald and Kobe Turner and Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford and Kyrene Williams and Puka Nacua in a divisional round game a week from now, where Stafford versus Purdy in the playoffs, who would you trust more in that situation? I know my answer is Stafford. I ranked every quarterback as how I view them right now going into the playoffs, who I trust the most, who I feel good about based on how they played. I put Stafford 1 among everybody. History
ahead of. I mean, you mean like because of what you think he will do in the playoffs? Like, so are you counting Lamar's playoff struggles?
I'm counting how I feel about them, and I'm obviously affected by what they've done in the postseasons in the past.
So Mahomes
and how they're playing right now.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that is a okay. Because
I mean, look, this is
listen,
obviously,
man. I don't think 28's enough to win this game. Like over 51 is one of my favorite bets of the weekend. I think that this game is going to be a shootout. I will be very surprised if the Lions lay an egg. I think this game comes down to the fourth quarter, and I think you need 31 or more to win.
Mahomes and Hurts were great in the playoffs last time, and Mahomes has been an incredible. We'll get to the Chiefs next. Mahomes has been an all-time playoff performer, but the way they've played, Hurts obviously has an injury and has sucked. Who else? Joe Flacco's the other Super Bowl winning quarterback in the playoffs. Okay.
Yeah,
Lamar Jackson hasn't done it yet. Stroud's first playoff game. Josh Allen come close.
No, Stafford is on a heater, and Stafford's a streaky player, and he's got his playmakers healthy, as you mentioned. So they are very, very dangerous. I'm not going to disagree with you. You mentioned Mahomes. He is arguably the best playoff quarterback of all time. Obviously not in terms of compilings of wins, but in terms of per game stats, he's won in quite a few of them. Do you expect the Magic to come back against Miami?
I really don't. The weather obviously is going to be ice bowl conditions there, and that's, as long as it's not super windy, he should still be able to make the type of throws that we're accustomed to watching Mahomes make in critical clutch games. But the team and the situation that I keep drawing back on here, and their record was not as good as Kansas City's this year. But I think there were a lot of people at this time last year that thought once the Buccaneers got into the playoffs, that light bulb was going to come on for Brady last year, and they were going to do something. And then they got into a playoff game against Dallas. And if not for Dallas's kicker forgetting how to kick a football, all that game would have been about was a Dallas laugher and complete blowout. It just they didn't flip a switch after what they had accomplished before winning a Super Bowl. So I don't know, man. It's just all I keep hearing about is, well, it's the playoffs now. It's Mahomes. It's Andy Reid. It's not based on how they've played this year.
No, it is not. But I do think that the weather, they should be more equipped to handle the weather than Miami. Miami, do you disagree?
I just feel like if Miami and the way they run the ball, if they played in a Rust Belt city or something like that, we would look at them as a team that could win these types of games because of they're going to potentially get Mostert back. Achane just had a huge game against the Bills, albeit in a loss. Yards per carry, what they do on the ground, they are an elite running team.
Tough to run on the Chiefs. Home field advantage, more experience playing in the games in terms of that temperature, as you mentioned, more experience in the playoffs, more big wins. I mean, Miami's beaten Dallas by 2 and has not performed well in other marquee spots this year. I'm fascinated. Like, Chiefs fans have seen so many big games, right? Deep playoff runs, Arrowhead Invitational for 5 years of the AFC Championship, all the Super Bowl appearances. This is a wild card game. You mentioned the Ice Bowl-like conditions. It's also the Tyreek Hill return after all the trash that he's talked. Chiefs fans are some of the best fans in all of sports anywhere. But I'm wondering what that you can bring when you're wearing gloves and hats and Vaseline on your face. And it'll be interesting to see what, if anything, Arrowhead does to impact this game. Because I got to be honest with you, man. You'd have to pay me money to stand outside in the cold in these temperatures for 3 hours. I would not be paying to go to this game.
So I've been to 2 out of the 3 places here that I'm going to mention, and I know you have too. I think Buffalo, Green Bay, and Kansas City are very similar places to play. Just the weather in December and January, plus the fan impact on games.
Yep.
Metal seats at Lambeau Field, bleacher seats, Bills games. They don't have wine and cheese fans in the lower sections. It's loud all the time. And I've been to a playoff game at Arrowhead. It's the same thing. I mean, it is bonkers how loud it gets there. Miami late in the year last year, twice, went to Buffalo, lost both games though. But in December, in a snow game, Tua was great. They scored 29 points. They lost by 2, I believe, 31-29. And the playoff game last year with Skylar Thompson, I mean, they could have easily won that game. I thought from a preparedness standpoint and ready to go standpoint, McDaniel did a very good job. He had some puzzling clock management things occur late in that game that I would wonder about here. But like, they did not seem like a team twice in Buffalo late last season that allowed for the weather to affect them. So that they at least have that going for them. Tua played in that 31-29 game, was very, very good. So I like them more than most people. I think, to me, though, both of these teams, if I'm ranking AFC teams as to how they're playing right now, I would put these teams 6 and 7 in the AFC. How they're playing right now going into the playoffs.
That's ridiculous.
Who's
you'd
playing?
You'd have the Steelers above them?
Well, I'm saying how they're playing right now. You think that the Chiefs are playing better than the Steelers?
What's right now? How far do I have to go back? 1 week?
How about the last 3 or 4 weeks?
So you're just Mason Rudolph in the last 3 weeks. You just that makes them better than the Miami Dolphins and the Kansas City Chiefs.
I don't think it has to make them better, but I just said based on how they're playing recently, these two teams have looked. I mean, the Eagles have a better record than the Steelers. Do you think they're better than Pittsburgh right now?
No.
Okay.
But the Eagles have a broken side of the ball. I do not believe you could say that about either of these two teams.
You don't think the Chiefs' offense is broken?
No, I think I want to see what happens in the postseason, and we've seen flashes from them. It's broken by their standards. It is not broken relative to, like, if they played the Steelers this weekend, I would expect the Chiefs to score more points than the Steelers would.
Okay, they scored. Well, they didn't against Oakland, against Vegas, and they scored one. They scored one touchdown against the 31st ranked defense in the NFL in Week 17.
I
kicked 6 field goals.
I am aware. It was very bad. What's the number? What would I have to pay you to go to this game?
Well, probably less than you think. Well, you're saying I got to sit outside?
Yeah. Would you?
I hate cold, man. I'd rather be in 105 degree weather than 15 degree weather or 10 degree weather.
Well, this is going to be -10 with wind chill. So if I gave you, would it be 1,000 in cash? Would you sit outside?
I'd go. Yeah, I probably would for that.
Okay. I asked Carrington today on 610, the home of the Chiefs. He said $5,000.
He's lying to you.
Yeah, that's what I said. Subscribe, rate, review.
He'll do a 6-hour shift for $300. He's sitting outside for $5,000.
More First and Pod after this. All right, back in on First and Pod. Give us a 5-star review. Tweet it to us. We'll retweet it. Browns and Texans, Pony. Flacco, Stroud. Who do you trust more?
Are you going to crush me if I say Flacco?
No. I mean, I think you're wrong if you say Flacco, but I get the argument. Because we just don't know what Stroud will do in the postseason. Browns defense is more likely to be a disruptor than the Texans defense. So, like, I get the argument, but Stroud is a gamer and a much better football player.
Well, I think about 2 playoff games in Houston that immediately spring to mind here that I think help my argument. And it both involved the Texans, and the shoe was on the other foot the second time. When Deshaun Watson made his first postseason appearance against the Colts, that was Andrew Luck's last year there. He was terrible at home. It was in Houston. They lost that game. Then the Colts went to Kansas City the next week and lost. Watson was atrocious in that game. I believe that was his first playoff start. You'd have to fact check me on that. I'm pretty sure it was. And then the reverse of that happened when Josh Allen went there. Remember that? Josh Allen went to Houston, started his first playoff game, fumbling the ball all over the place, making crazy-ass plays. I mean, the worst version of Josh Allen, the guy that's completely reckless, and those plays outweigh all the other great things that he has going for him. So, yeah, I mean, Ben Roethlisberger, 0-4 after a great rookie season, won 15 games in a row, and then was completely garbage in the playoffs, was lucky to beat the Jets, needed a Doug Bryan missed field goal at the end of the game, and then threw, I think, 3 interceptions against the Patriots the next week. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting what it does. the pressure of the playoffs. I do think it's a real thing, the one and done nature of it. They just played a playoff game last week, you could argue. But I've seen the Texans and Browns already play each other this year, and Joe Flacco and Amari Cooper did something that had never been done in Browns history before. Now CJ Stroud's out there, and that's going to make the Texans defense better.
No, I don't. I agree. Listen, they could clearly lose. I would be a little surprised if Stroud laid an egg.
And it's on the road. Well, I'm not saying he's going to lay an egg, but we've seen rookies falter in the playoffs, and Joe Flacco is the best road quarterback in NFL history.
Yep.
In the playoffs.
Without
a doubt. Yeah. The guy lives for these moments. He flourishes right now in these spots.
He does. Stroud is by far the most interesting part of the game because he just, through sheer force of talent, leadership, personality, and like seemingly humility, every time I hear this guy interviewed, I'm like, God, he's just...
I love him. I'm a big fan of his. You know that.
How
could you not be?
So likable. I mean, obviously, like very religious, but also like principled and has opinions and talks about criminal justice reform and just like
I didn't know that. Interesting.
I think his father's in prison is the story, and he's like got a sentence that was is pretty severe. And
if you're the Ravens, who are you rooting for in this game? If chalk holds and the Bills and Chiefs win, and they play each other in the next round, and the winner of this game goes to Baltimore next week, who would you rather play?
I think you'd rather play Houston.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yep. That's the right answer.
I think you'd rather play Houston because you think that with a week to rest and prepare, a rookie's not coming into Baltimore and beating you. But the Flacco magic, the pressure, like the lemon booty of like if like a weird thing, like if Lamar fumbled on the first drive and then Flacco punched it in for 6, and all of a sudden it's like 7-0, and the Browns would get the ball to start the second half, and Flacco's got a touchdown and Lamar doesn't. Like, you know what I mean? I do think that there would be something to the familiarity. Like the Browns wouldn't be intimidated. They know exactly what they're walking into.
They've won there this year.
Yeah. So all of those reasons, I think generally speaking, those division games in the postseason get weird. So I think Baltimore's probably rooted for the Texans in this spot. All right. The next game's your game. Steelers Bills. I told you last week I was not interested in watching the Steelers in the postseason. Forecast calls for crazy wins, worst wins in playoff history. Does that even the playing field and make this a game?
If you go back to that Patriots-Bills game in the regular season, that Monday night game from a few years ago, that would tell you yes. Because we saw what that matchup looked like without wins in the playoffs, remember? And I don't think the Bills punted. They played an immaculate offensive game. They scored a touchdown or kicked a field goal on every possession in what will end up being Belichick's final playoff game as a Patriots coach. His defense got spanked in embarrassing fashion. And then when they played earlier in the season there, Mac Jones completed 2 passes and they got out of there with a win. So I do think if it's a wind game like that, it's going to completely change the way both teams play. And I just think that if you're a huge underdog, which the Steelers are, isn't anything that gets the Bills out of their normal offensive structure a good thing?
100%.
Right.
They're like, to me, this question, I get why you asked it because it's going to be such a story of the game. Like gamblers will basically say, if it's 15 miles an hour or less, there's no impact. 15 to 20, gusts to 25, whatever. Hit or miss, depends on the quarterback, depends on the stadium, depends on the consistency, that sort of thing. But no one can really do anything passing the football with any degree of consistency and dependency on what the accuracy is going to be if the wind gusts are consistently 25 plus miles per hour. That's generally speaking.
They think the wind is going to be around 25 for most of the game, and that gusts are going to be all the way up to in the 50s.
Well, then in that scenario, then even Josh Allen, one of the strongest arms in the world, will absolutely be disrupted because you can only throw a football so hard. It's inflated. The wind will take it. So that's why the total of the game is so low. And if you've taken the throwing ability away from Josh Allen, obviously that is one of the biggest things, probably the best thing that Buffalo has going for them. They're still at home. It obviously also impacts the Steelers. It randomizes the game, though. So I think it definitely plays to the Steelers' favor more so than if this game was in a dome for some reason. You know what I mean? Like if the weather was so bad that they had to relocate it to a different location like that. I would say, though, we normally see Josh Allen just run more in the postseason. So that makes him a very dangerous version of himself. I would expect Josh Allen to have 10 plus carries in this game, and I would still think that the Bills are going to win the game.
So would I. And Allen as a runner, I think, is a scarier proposition than him as a passer, because at least when he passes the ball, there's the chance he's going to do something insane. Yep. And if you take that out, I think for Steelers fans, be careful what you wish for if it turns into a game where both teams strictly run, because you've got Mason Rudolph and they've got Josh Allen. Man, it would be interesting if the weather got that bad, because this is going to sound nuts. And it's the first time I've said this. This is not something that I've said on my show yet. But if the weather was really that bad and I'm the Steelers, I would be tempted to go Wildcat a lot in this game. And I would also be tempted to, if I'm going to dress a second quarterback,
play Mitch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, he's under strict orders to not throw the football, and he likes to go rogue sometimes.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about him is, and we both know this having covered him and, the amount of grays and times I've just freaked out watching him, but like, he is a really good athlete. And the reason why the Bills brought him in as a backup is because they thought he was a very, 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 very poor man's version of Josh Allen. So if it's both about the running abilities of both guys, I don't know, Danny. I'm just speaking out loud here.
He's not as strong as Josh Allen.
No, but you're right. He's not
athlete.
like a Cam Newton runner like Josh Allen is, where there's a physicality to his running style.
He's a good athlete.
But he's a very, very good athlete. Yes.
Yeah. It would have to be crazy to do that. But if you say that that's what the forecast for the game is going to be, you're going to bet the Steelers? It's tough to cover a double-digit spread when the total's in the low 30s.
I know, man. Probably not, though.
Yeah. Because 20-0 is still a cover.
We haven't you kind of touched on it. My God, did our radio stations create like an international situation with this game on Thursday? I'm sure you're probably aware of that.
Yeah.
With what happened. It's interesting because...
Well, fill in the audience.
Yeah, so and this is a guy who, by the way, is an investigative reporter, Marty Griffin, who's respected enough that, he's the guy that broke the stories in Dallas about Michael Irvin and the Cowboys. He had to leave Dallas because of that and come back home to Pittsburgh. He's a fascinating guy. And he got a phone call about this morning and then talked about it on the air. And so I heard him say it. And when I heard that, I talked about it on my show and put it out into social media. Immediately I heard back from people in Buffalo who I still are in contact with, who are like, there's 0% chance that they would move the game to Cleveland. And big national insiders and stuff had to refute it and everything else. It's interesting though. Like I've heard, I even was still hearing Thursday night people saying that conversation absolutely happened. And the NFL told the Buffalo news station that we've had no discussions about moving the game. Isn't that like derelict of duty? If there's a legit chance of lake effect snow that shuts down highways in Western New York and prevents people from moving around, there is a chance it happens, maybe not a high one. Even if the chance of it happening is 1%, isn't this the time where the NFL
You got to have a contingency plan.
Right. And the reason why it was believable to me is because Detroit's unavailable this weekend. Because the game's Sunday night. And that would be the obvious place to go play a game if you had to, worst case scenario, move it, because they've done that with a Bills game before. Played it in a dome in Detroit. So the Cleveland thing I thought made sense because it's close to both teams. It's like an equidistant thing, but they'll play the game in Buffalo. But hey, Danny, we lived through it in Kansas City where a Steelers game got moved, playoff game from the afternoon to night. I could see something like that happening.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be really weird to move a playoff game from outdoors in the elements to a dome. But
no, I'm not saying the game is going to move cities. I'm saying the game might move times.
Move times.
And remember, Monday's a holiday too.
Yep.
That I'll be working on.
You're working though, obviously. Yeah, I will be working as well. I mean, yeah.
I don't have, it's the Monday after a Steelers playoff game. If I'm not working that, I would fire myself. Yeah. Packers and Cowboys. Danny, what's more likely? Dallas loses this game or they get to the NFC Championship game for the first time since 1996?
Yeah, 95-96 season, right?
Yeah.
I would say get to the NFC Championship game.
Yep.
Is more likely. Win the NFC Championship game, I would say lose this game. And I will also say it's very weird for me to be rooting for the Green Bay Packers. But man, would it be funny to see Mike McCarthy lay an egg in this game and Bill Belichick be the next coach of the Cowboys.
Not happening. I think that's that has been floated out there. Can you see Jerry Jones, a man that I think loves as an owner, that he gets to sit at the end of the table and run his drafts? And even if he might not be doing all the scouting work and stuff, he's likes to all that. He's not. But he likes to pretend. Yeah. He likes to play make-believe and act like it's his draft. You think he's going to let Bill Belichick come in and actually do that stuff? I don't.
So I think that Belichick...
He clashed with Parcells, man. I don't see him doing it with little Parcells, Belichick. Little Bill.
But he's aged. He's different. Dave Wanstead said today that he thinks that he would and that he knows he's got a good relationship with Belichick. And he just made nice with Jimmy Johnson. He's got the Netflix thing coming out. He desperately wants another Super Bowl. All he cares about is star power. And I think that wherever Belichick goes, he's going to do what Andy Reid did when he left Philly. And he just wants to be able to work with the GM and have a say. I don't think he's going to have control over personnel in his next stop. I think that that is too much for basically anybody to do, and he has proven to not be good at it. And I think that he is going to obviously have a say, and he'll have a big say, but I don't think that he's going to be the general manager of the next team. And so in that world, go to the easier conference in the NFC, make a ton of money, go get Shula's record, which is the thing that I think he would be coaching for at that point. Have a quarterback attached to the gig. I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility. And if McCarthy loses the game, I do think he's fired.
What?
Yeah, man.
Okay. Well, I think there's a better chance if that happens that we see a Jason Garrett, Wade Phillips situation and Dan Quinn gets promoted to Cowboys head coach.
Yeah, I think that's on the table too. I think McCarthy, him laying an egg in this spot against his old team and losing to a first-time playoff quarterback in Jordan Love, and who's been statistically the best quarterback in the NFL since week 11. I mean, the guy's got one turnover, and I think it's 18 touchdowns, 18 passing touchdowns, 20 total touchdowns since week 11. Like, if McCarthy loses to the Packers and Jordan Love outplays Dak and Dallas lays an egg offensively, I could see Mike McCarthy getting fired given the caliber of coaches that are out there this cycle.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think they have I think they will. I think if I had to pick one, it would be the NFC Championship game here, even though I've, bashed the Cowboys for anytime we come remotely close to trusting them, they do something to tell us that who they really are. But I think if my scenarios play out and the Rams win, then they're going to be set up for the winner of the Eagles and Bucks. And at that point, a Packers or Eagles/Bucks divisional round, that'll be the easiest 2-game. I mean, look, you'd rather have a bye and play no one, but those back-to-back games, I think, will end up being an easier path to the championship game than anybody has, 49ers and Ravens included, because the Ravens might have to end up playing the Browns, and I would not want to play the Rams. Those are division games, like you mentioned earlier. I think that would be a setup. That's an ideal setup for Dallas to get to the championship game. And the last thing I'll say about Belichick working with Jerry Jones is we heard that one of the reasons why Kraft wanted to do this is because it just weighs on you. It's just hard working with Bill Belichick day in and day out, especially for 24 years. I just don't think Jerry Jones wants to do that, man. It's not fun. I think Jerry Jones likes fun, Danny.
I do too. I get the sense that he enjoys himself.
Yes. And now he's going to work with the ultimate curmudgeon, the most surly coach in NFL history, the most dour, stoic guy. I just don't see that.
He did it with Parcells.
Yeah, and he hated it.
He likes to win, though. And listen, I wouldn't hire Belichick, but he likes star power. He likes stories. He likes people talking about the Cowboys. We will do a little bit more on Belichick and Eagles and Bucks after this. Welcome back, First and Pod. Danny Parkins, Andrew Fillipponi. Every game, every team, every week. If you're listening on one of the Odyssey stations, we appreciate you. We're a podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review. It's crazy. The Monday night game to me is, I'm obviously going to watch it start to finish because of this job and because it's what we do and it's the NFL playoffs. But on some levels, this is the least intriguing of the games because of Philly's collapse in this spot. Do you believe that Philly is the secret playoff Belichick team?
I actually don't. And, well, before I get into my rationale, would you like to weigh in on this first and just tell me yes or no? Do you think that they're the Adam Schefter mystery team that has a coach employed right now who can't be linked to Belichick because scouts honor, like, Adam Schefter is not even, he knows he's going to burn bridges if he reports that a team that is still playing with a coach that's still working wants to hire Bill Belichick?
I think it's the Eagles or the Cowboys.
Okay. Well, can I make the argument for Tampa Bay?
Sure.
Jason Light's the GM there. He's a guy that worked with Belichick in New England. He worked underneath him in their scouting department for a long time. And I don't know what when he maxed out there before he left for Tampa, I don't know what his title was, but there's a familiarity there. Light, I think, feels like he owes his NFL career to Belichick. And so Todd Bowles, I think, is a coach that's only still employed because the Buccaneers won the division again. If they had somehow blown it in week 18 and lost to Carolina, I think he'd be gone. I think he would have been fired the day after the season ended with an 8-9 record, having lost to New Orleans and Carolina in back-to-back weeks. Do you agree with that, by the way?
I do. I mean, it's 4 straight playoff appearances for Tampa, 3 straight division championships. And can you really see Bill Belichick doing exactly what Tom Brady did and risking not winning a Super Bowl in Tampa, which would be the overwhelmingly likely outcome, and then just furthering the comparisons between the two of them?
I think that it depends on a couple of things. How much does he value who he's working with and who he's working for? And I think the Glazer family, we know that they have a ton of money. They invest in European soccer clubs and whatever else too. Like, they've got, all these guys have a reservoir.
Yeah, but Washington has plenty of money. Dallas,
I know that, but I was going to say, like, the Chargers have no history of actually spending that money on coaches.
And I didn't mention them.
Right. I mean, that's the spot where everybody puts Belichick. They don't have a GM there now either. Telesco got fired. He could have the czar of football thing too. That's just, the Chargers have no history of doing that. Atlanta gets brought up. Like, it's in the same division. They don't have a quarterback. Would Belichick look at Baker Mayfield and think he can win with that guy? I think he might in that division.
See, like, here's the thing. We should never underestimate the ego of coaches.
Right. And the other thing is the dude lived in a division where they won 8 straight division, or they went to 8 straight AFC championship games. I think they won the division 11 straight times, in part because the other 3 teams sucked. You just mentioned Tampa Bay's already won it 4 times. In the last 2 years, they haven't been they're a 500 football team the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's 3 straight division titles, 4 straight playoff appearances.
Right. Okay. So thank you. Like,
yeah,
I think who he aligns himself with in these golden years, I think counts for something. And if he trusts the owner and the dude who's the quote unquote GM there, and he doesn't hate the quarterback, yeah, it would be awkward that he goes to the same place that Brady did. But, man, do you think he really wants to put up with the BS in Philly? You think he really wants to do that? And man, how fickle would Philly be if they dumped Sirianni after one bad year, man? He got his coordinators wrong. Belichick's gotten his coordinators wrong.
Yeah, it is listen, I don't think Philly, you're right. That would be a miserable experience for him in a lot of ways. It'd be pretty hilarious to see the dogged Philly media with Belichick. But I mean, the Boston media is tough, so I'm not positive that really would impact him in all of those situations. I think he wants Shula. I think that he was pissed that Shula, that people around the Dolphins talked about what was it, Spygate, and he holds a grudge. And he wants the all-time wins record, and he's going to go wherever he thinks he can win the most games the fastest. And obviously, he would love another ring without Brady. But
I also think Howie Roseman, even though a lot of their moves have backfired this year, I think that he's still regarded as one of the best,
definitely,
GMs in the NFL, and he's going to, like, the idea of him ceding that or giving that over. He already lived that. Okay,
like I said, My theory is that Belichick's going to save face on that and say, I just want to coach.
I'm shocked that you think that, like, if he said that to Kraft,
they were done, man. Clearly, they were, like you said, 24 years, 24, and Andy Reid saved face because he went to a new spot. Like, he did the personnel thing in Philly. He wasn't good at it. They fired him. Then he goes to KC, and he's like, I'm just great at coaching. I'll have a say.
I think 2 totally different personalities.
Well, yes.
2 very, very different human beings. I just don't see it in Belichick's nature to say, I'm going to do less now. I think he chanted no days off after they won a Super Bowl. Now you think he wants a gig that's less demanding?
NFL head coach is a plenty demanding gig. You can make it as demanding as you want it to be. You don't have to be grinding the Senior Bowl tape for.
I think he lives for that, man. I think that's his idea of a vacation. I think that's where he gets his rocks off. Exactly that.
Well, he's got a yacht, so.
That includes, like, it's named after all the Super Bowl wins.
Yeah.
And he counts the Super Bowl wins when he was the Giants defensive coordinator.
Yeah, it's called 8 rings, right?
Do you like that? That he counts those? I think he counts them because it gives him one more to Brady.
Yeah, I think that's fine. It's petty. I respect it. Spencer Ray's our producer. Enjoy the wild card weekend. He's Andrew Fillipponi. I'm Danny Parkins. First and Pod. Peace.